Hey everybody, I'm Angie Goff, and this is the Oh My Goff Show. For nearly 2 decades, I've covered big stories and big names, whether it was reporting from the royal wedding, the Super Bowl, or sitting down with the First Lady. There's one thing I know for sure. Behind every headline is a human story, one filled with ups, downs, laughter, and life lessons. Each episode will tap into some pretty incredible minds, people who've found true success in chasing their dream or changing the world. It's the story behind the story that I hope will inspire your own. This is the Oh My Goff Show with Angie Goff.
This week on the Oh My Goff Show, I just want to preface it by saying that we are talking about something that we don't normally talk about. Usually when we have guests on, you know, they're change makers, they're transformational figures, they're interesting people. Sometimes they're famous, sometimes they're not, but they all have a story. And this time, it's a story that I saw unfold in my own newsroom when I saw my fellow colleague being really touched by what she was seeing happen in the news. And the more I thought about it, and I thought about my Iranian-American friends, I thought, gosh, you know, there's more to this story. This seems a little different this time around. And we are talking about the Iranian Revolution that we are seeing unfold in the streets of Iran right now. One that is being led by young women in general. It's the biggest form of dissent that we've seen in decades against this government. And so it is an honor to have Iranian-American Fox 5 news journalist and anchor Shirin Rajaee and my good friend join me today to talk more in depth about this because really, as you know, in the business we're in, we see a sliver of it. We show a sliver of it. And it's really, it's on the shoulders of us to go and do the work, you know, when we're not on air and to tell the stories to our friends and our families. And like my daughter, I told my daughter Dora, who is about to turn 12, I said, I really want you to watch these 2 podcasts that I'm putting together. And she's like, what are they on? I was like, they're on Iran. And she's like, huh? And, you know, and that's the thing. And that's a problem. Like they need to know. Yeah. So Shirin, thank you so much for being here.
Angie, first of all, I love you. You know that. We work in a business that not all the time people love each other, but I truly love you. You are one of the most genuine people in this industry. So first of all, I love you as a friend, as a coworker, but I'm so happy that we can use this platform of yours to shed some light on what's going on in Iran. And as a journalist, you're right. A lot of times we stay kind of disconnected to our stories because we have to be. But this one kind of, you know, resonates with me on a very deep level, on a very personal level. And it's hard to not have an opinion or to not get attached. So this was one of those situations where I wasn't going to stay attached. And yes, I'm an Iranian-American. A lot of people actually don't know I was born in Iran. I was born in Iran. This is years after the revolution. That. Yeah. Because, you know, but I came here when I was 3 or 4 years old. So, you know, you become very Americanized, but I'm still so tied to my culture. And my parents, you know, grew up in Iran. That's our homeland. That's their homeland. And so when I see things like this happen, there's a lot of emotions that are going through me. There's different kinds of emotions. On one end, when you see what's happening in Iran, and first of all, again, thank you for bringing attention to it, because you can't even Google some of this stuff. You know, when you Google right now what's happening in Iran, you get some information, you get some basics, you know, how many people killed, a very generalization of what's happening. But really, in order to get the better idea of what's happening in Iran, you have to know who to follow on social media to kind of really get, it's like a grassroots movement among people that are actually there and the people here in the States that are pushing that information out. But I have a range of emotions. On one end, I am so inspired and proud of what I'm seeing happening in Iran, because what we are seeing unfold in Iran has not happened in decades, in my lifetime, where women, especially young girls, are defying the government, taking off their compulsory hijabs, cutting their hair, walking in the streets in a way that, again, they know can lead to death, to punishment, to being beaten in the streets, which is happening right now. And so I'm so inspired by the bravery that I'm seeing, because really these young girls are the face of bravery right now, and the world is noticing them, and we are noticing them. But I'm also, on the other end, my other range of emotion is anger. I am so outraged and so beside myself as to what is happening to these young people. And to the people of Iran in general. Men are involved, children are involved, the elderly are involved in this movement, this so-called, revolution of its kind in Iran. And I'm so outraged by the brutal crackdown of this regime. I mean, we know it is a fact that this regime is brutal. They murder people, they don't care. And what you're not seeing if you Google it are a lot of the images that are coming out of Iran. So you're not seeing a lot of these Basiji officers, the security forces in Iran, literally beating people right now for what they're doing, shooting them with guns. These are peaceful protesters that are taken to the streets. So there's a lot of emotions running through me. My parents obviously watch this with a different perspective. They grew up under...
That's what I was interested in knowing. How is, because you see this young group just stronger, energized, different, nothing to lose, as Talarasi, who we'll talk about in a minute, told me. She says they have nothing to lose, and that's why they're out there taking this risk, because they had nothing to begin with. When talking about these girls, but the older generation and the parents, because you are seeing some older women now.
For sure.
They are out there cutting their hair and doing this as well, and taking the risk too, and saying enough is enough. So, but I'd be interested in knowing what the elders are saying.
Well, I will say that. This uprising is not, let me give you a little bit of background. This all started with the death of Mahsa Amini. I'm sure you've heard her name being chanted all over the place. September, I believe, 13th. She died at the hands of the morality police. She was traveling with her family through Iran, and she was stopped by the morality police for wearing her so-called hijab loosely, showing a little bit too much hair. That was her crime. The morality police took her in. A few days later, she's in the hospital with head trauma. I mean,
bleeding out the ear,
basically beaten to death. And not to say this is the first time this has happened. It is not the first time that this has happened. The morality police has been around for a long time, but her death struck a chord in people and has created this uprising, this movement. That people are saying enough is enough. She was 22 years old. Of course, the government are saying, oh, she had a heart attack.
Perfectly healthy when she was taking with her
Perfectly
brother,
healthy,
right? Yeah,
yes.
I mean, no known issues, no known
issues, right? And so I wanted to give that background to say how this protest started. But as far as your question, the outlook of different people, my parents grew up under the monarchy. Iran didn't used to be like this, right? The 1979 revolution completely changed Iran and took it down a very bad path. I mean, a lot of people were, some people were complaining that the Shah, under the king, was abusing his power or whatnot. They wanted him eventually out, and they did exile him. But my parents grew up in Iran that was just beautiful. My
fashion. They were
they were a
brink of fashion.
Exactly.
I mean, wearing minks. I mean, it was like a different. It's nothing
and
like
just
you
the
could
rights.
imagine.
And what you kind of see the stark contrast is like my mom, my dad. They could walk in the streets together. My mom wasn't covered up. I mean, like people were able to dance, go to sporting events. The basic rights that you look now and you go, wow. Was that really Iran? Yeah, that was Iran just 40 years ago. So I feel like the morality police, by the way, they've been around for about 40 years, but under different administrations, they are either less obvious or more obvious, less strict or more strict. And this president, President Raisi, is one of those hardliner presidents. Actually, he campaigned on a campaign that, wanted to crack down on social norms, especially for women, what they did, how they dressed. And so the morality police is more visible now. They're more strict now. Their crackdowns are a little bit more visible. And so they've always been around. But Mahsa Amini's death has sparked this movement that has not just grown throughout the cities of Iran, but in the United States, in DC.
Globally.
Thousands of people are coming out every week. We are now in week number 8 of these protests. And around the world, I mean, if you look at these images out of Berlin from just a few weeks ago, you're just in awe, like, where are these people coming from? So it's amazing how much this has grown over the last just 8 weeks. And I think when they see these images out of Iran, it's a sad reality. It's like, they're seeing this government that's literally choking its people, and not the Iran that they grew up with, So I like my dad, he's always talked about wanting to go back to Iran and wanting to go visit, but he's scared. He has no idea, what kind of Iran he's going back to. So part of him is almost like, he's so at awe at the young people right now and what they're doing, but he's also afraid.
Would he want his daughter being in the streets?
Exactly.
That's what you hear, is that a lot of these, these protesters say, my parents don't want me out here.
Yeah.
But they haven't stopped them because they realize they're going to go and do it no matter what.
And would your parents here in the United States, imagine if you were protesting for whatever cause that you're passionate about here in the U.S., knowing that if you hit the streets today,
you could be shot.
You could be shot at. You could be kidnapped and raped and beaten. Would you do it? So when you think about that, and I think about we have kids, would you put yourself in that kind of line of danger? My girlfriend that's sitting right here, she's been protesting every week here in DC.
Yep.
But would you do it, if you knew that you could be shot at and killed? And so then when you think about these young girls, 15, 16, 17, 14, going out in the streets, and putting it all out there and going, you know what, it's either this or nothing, because the life that they're living is no life that they want to live. They don't have basic rights. And I want to make a point that this is not about just the hijab. Women are not out there just because they don't want to wear a hijab. They want basic freedoms and basic rights, and the ability to not be stopped if they have a little bit of hair showing is important, but they can't sing, they can't dance, they can't go to sporting events, they can't, ride a bicycle, they can't hold hands with someone without being questioned by it, they can't run for offices of power, they have no say in their destiny, and so when they live in a life like that, they're like, what is this life worth living? Let me at least fight for potentially a better life. And so they're putting it all out there, and they're willing to get killed.
They're willing to die for it. We talk about the young woman who I introduced you to, a friend of ours, her name is Tala Rossi.
When I went to school, they used to line us up every morning and check our hair, check our nails, and make sure that we don't have polish on, we don't have hair color on, we haven't waxed our eyebrows, and we're Iranian girls have a lot of hair, so at a certain age you want to start taking care of yourself.
And she is an Iranian-American, born in Maryland, but moved to Iran as a child, grew up in Tehran, and up until she was 16. And the story here, which you will also be available on the podcast this week, we aired a snippet of it on TV yesterday. And it was a tough interview to sit through because, and most of the stuff I couldn't put on television, right? Because just even the way she described certain things that she witnessed and heard and that's happening there, and going to school there. And so, but long story short, she was 16. She talked about this incredible underground that exists there. Yes, in public you cannot show yourself, but she says they are the most fashionable people, Iranian people, women especially, are the most fashionable women you will ever meet in your life. And so a lot of times they will wear all of this underneath, and then they will go to their parties and secret, and then when they leave, they suit up again. And it just so happened it was a 16th birthday party for a friend. Co-ed, her brother was there, everybody's there, and she wore a cool mini skirt. She's always been obsessed with fashion, and then it got raided, and I think 30 of them got arrested and separated. And she said a lot of times you can pay off the police,
sure.
And then she said there's different levels of police, and then she talked about, and I think it was the same one that arrested Mahsa Amini. Is it Basiji? Yeah. So. And she said they didn't really think anything of it. They thought they were being taken to the jail. And then 5 days later, they all had to line up and go before a judge and get their punishment. And the boys got 50 lashings to be whipped 50 times. And the girls all got 40. It just came out yesterday that the Iran government said that the first protester's been sentenced to death, not releasing any details on that. And it's really hard for us to get a body count of how many people died. We know people have died, and people try to analyze because unless it's like state run, media, you're not allowed in Iran. You know, everything that you see coming out of Iran is under a VPN. Like, people are risking their lives to to send this stuff out and find ways to get their message out. And that is why it's so important, because we're not allowed in. Nobody's allowed in. But I think the count is like almost 300. I think even, you know, most of them women or young people, and 43 kids. Yeah. I think is the count that I saw with CNN. But it's just, and a lot of the stuff we couldn't show on television because it is so, it's so hard to watch and hard to see. But, and I guess that's the question, because Tala really said the important thing is that we have to keep talking about it, you know, because the news cycle, we move on to the next thing. Like
actually, a lot of people have asked, you know, why aren't you guys airing more Iran? And especially with this coverage, we're seeing some networks take it on a little bit more, but we kind of see snippets here and there. But you're not seeing the coverage that this story right now, what's happening in Iran, is this pivotal moment in history for the country, for the world, for democracy, and it's not getting the coverage that it needs. I do want to point out what's happening right now with the sentencings.
Okay.
Because
wasn't there
there was some misconstrued information. So about almost 15,000. Can you imagine 15,000 protesters have been detained or arrested and are in prison right now in Iran?
How do they have enough space for that?
I mean, Evin Prison is one of the most notorious prisons that had a fire a few weeks ago. It is known for housing political protesters, journalists,
the journalists that broke the Mahsa Amini story.
Yes, the journalists that broke the Mahsa Amini story.
Two women.
And the atrocities that we hear out of Evin Prison, the way that they treat and torture and horribly take care of these prisoners. But these people have been detained or arrested, and one person, I believe, has been sentenced to death. But Iran's so-called parliament, about 227 members of their 270, is it? They have said that these protesters should get the death penalty. Which is an unbelievable thing for these members of parliament to say. 227 members are saying that these people should be sentenced to death. Now, there is some information that was out there that unfortunately went viral, that, you know, the headline of this post, and I'm not going to even say where it came from.
Is this the one Justin Trudeau shared?
Yes. Okay. So there was a post that said 15,000 protesters sentenced to death. It got a lot of attention. It went viral. People like Justin Trudeau, other celebrity likes, reposted it. But then the person that posted it said, see, this is just misinformation. They were not sentenced to death. The word sentenced got in there, and really that's the only issue here, is that it technically, yes, they were not all sentenced to death. Only one person has been sentenced to death. But you're dealing with a brutal, murderous regime. So the lives of these 15,000 people are still at stake. They're still at risk. And yet the news coverage becomes about this post and how this post had the wrong word in there. And so then people kind of lost interest in the story altogether because, oh, they're not all 15,000 sentenced to death. Oh, just one person sentenced to death. But
the sentence a protester to death. Imagine that happening in America.
Right. And the way that they're treating these people right now, wherever they are,
broken legs.
Absolutely it's just brutal. So
crazy.
Imagine being the loved ones of one of these 15,000 people. A lot of them are teenagers. They're young kids that are there, women, children. And the death toll in Iran, it's hard to get accurate information. You're right, is over 300. Many of these children, dozens of kids, but you can't get a right count. You can't get a right information because, of course, the state government is trying to hush everything. They have blocked internet access. You can't get the right information. The people that are actually getting us this information are people that are on the ground, that are trying to work their back way routes to kind of get information out. And that's the problem right now is, you know, how do we get the right information? How do we get media coverage? But I'm so also proud of the Iranian-Americans here in the States, because while we are not risking our lives, what we can do is just to keep the attention on this story. It's the only way that we can show our support to the Iranian people to keep fighting, that we see you, that the world sees you, and to keep going, because I feel like, you know, if anything, maybe it's giving them some level of hope.
Because they see, because I asked Tala about that, and she said that is inspiring them. She's like, people make fun of, a celebrity in America, saying I stand with the women of Iran, but you don't realize the power that has when they see something like that keeps them, that fuels them, that keeps them going. Okay. Now, our friend Pilar, I know she has another meeting coming up. But, hi, Pilar, are you there?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, let me invite you to video.
Hi.
Pilar, good to see you,
Hi,
girl.
Pilar, nice to meet you.
See you. I am wearing my blue butterflies because the butterflies are a symbol of rebirth and transformation. And I think this is what's happening in Iran. And it's a country of current rebirth and transformation. But my question speaks to you, Shirin, as you reflect on your life. And I wonder, how would your life have been different had you stayed back in Iran, had your parents not immigrated? How would it have been? And that's the first question. And the second one is, do you see something happening in the US of women losing their rights that could potentially or need to wake us up to get us thinking about, look what's happening in Iran? Should we be more cognizant of our rights here in the US? That's it.
Well, that's a good question, Pilar. First of all, to answer the second question, I do think that democracy is at risk when we don't pay attention to a country like Iran, a huge country with so much power. If we don't pay attention to what's happening in Iran and we turn the other way, we turn the other cheek to millions of people that are demanding equal rights, human rights, and the world doesn't respond to that, the US doesn't respond to that, yes, I do think that democracy, that rights are at risk because we are basically saying,
it's okay.
It's okay. And what else can be at risk? When we look at obviously our election processes, we see we actually can doubt our own levels of democracy here in the States too. So I think it's important for the people of the world, for the women of the world to rise up and stand with the women of Iran, even though you have no connection. If there's, that's why it makes me so upset when people say, why isn't this in the news? I don't think a lot of people care. They're disconnected from Iran. They don't even know where Iran is. Isn't Iran just a brutal country anyway? Just it's these perceptions of disconnect with humanity, because at the end of the day, we're humans, right? We might be labeled as Iranians because we live in Iran and are Americans, but at our core, we are human beings. And so I do feel that if the world, if the US, if the people of different countries, and whether wherever you are from, are not paying attention to what's happening right now, I think that it is something that could be at stake for our own freedoms in the US. As far as what my life would be, gosh.
Do you ever think about that?
Oh, all the time. And I try not to cry about it because I'm very gosh.
Oh, Shirin.
Whoa.
I'm going to get a tissue from your makeup.
I feel you because I'm a daughter of immigrants from Colombia. And what our parents did for all of us is indescribable. So those tears are your heart speaking and sending messages of love to your mom, to your dad, to all of those generations that did what they have to do to get you here. So,
it's, I'm sorry, I try to hold back my tears as much as I can, but, I feel, you kind of feel guilty. I feel almost a level of guilt that, I got out when I did. I have all these opportunities. Look at me. I'm a news anchor for American news. I have a platform. I have a voice. And a lot of my fellow Americans, Iranians in Iran, they don't have voices. They don't have basic rights. I would be one of those women right now, covered up and having to deal with some of these issues that really you take for granted here in the United States. We take so much for granted. I mean, Andrew, what are the things that we complain about in the United States are so trivial. And some of these young women are just wanting to do some of the basic things, have some of the basic rights, have some control.
They want to watch
their...
Baywatch. That's what Tala told me.
Yeah.
And she could have gotten in trouble. They used to literally steal, like, they would, like, get, I don't know what you call it,
like those
not contraband. Yeah, but they would sneak in, like, satellite,
right.
like, whatever.
Like some of those basic things. My mom was telling me when she was living in Iran under the, again, monarchy, they used to be able to go to sporting events. You can't even do that as a woman now. It's just men that get to go. And why do women wear the, compulsory hijab? And, by the way, long coats that cover their entire body, including their ankles, so that the men don't get aroused. I mean, this is, it's hard to imagine that kind of life. And so I'm always so grateful for my parents and the sacrifices they made. I can't imagine leaving a country, your language, your job, your family, your everything, and coming to a foreign country and having to rebuild all of that and start from fresh. So very indebted to them. And I just pray for the people of Iran, because what they're going through right now, I just pray that something good comes out of it. Actually, what's happening in these few days is pretty also remarkable. Starting yesterday, today, tomorrow, people are coming into the streets of Iran, are being called to action in a much different way. So we've been seeing ongoing protests for the last 8 weeks, but over the course of these 3 days, it's called Bloody November.
Okay.
They are paying tribute to the lives lost in 2019, when there was also an uprising over the spike in gasoline and fuel costs. All overnight, the fuel costs went up 200-fold. And so people took to the streets. It started off that way. It led to a broader protest over anti-regime sentiment, and over 1,500 people were killed.
Wow.
1,500 people. And so over the next 3 days, people of Iran are coming together. They're coming into the capital of Tehran, and they want people to go on strike. Businesses right now I'm seeing in the cities of Shiraz, Tabriz, Tehran, Esfahan are going on strike. There are iron workers today, I believe in Esfahan, that walked off the job. I'm talking about thousands of people.
And that's a risky thing to do.
It's a very risky thing to do, but they're making a statement, and especially over the next 3 days, as they kind of, again, pay tributes to the lives lost in 2019, they are coming out with full force. So you're going to actually hopefully see this being covered by media. But if you don't, again, you have to follow people on social media to get this information and to actually see what's happening. So I pray for the people that are going out there right now, again, so bravely. These university students, a lot of the universities right now, the students are taking, coming out of their classrooms and also protesting, and the way that they're treating these young kids, I think that's what kills me the most. But again, something to be very, very proud of over the next course. And the big question really with this is what happens?
Yeah, what happens?
What happens from here?
Because
what will this actually lead to?
Well, because it is unlike anything we've ever seen. Pilar, by the way, as always, great question. Thank you so much, Mama.
Bye. Thank you.
I do want to share with you, Walter's watching, and as we bring in our friend Bruce, and Walter said, Shirin, thank you for your honesty and for continuing to keep this issue on the front burner. So that came from him, and he's joining us in our audience right now.
Thank you, Bruce.
Or that was from Walter.
Oh, from Walter.
But here's our friend Bruce, who is a good friend of the show. And
hi, Bruce.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Well, I appreciate everything that's been said so far. And Pilar, your questions were wonderful. My question, just really quick. I can't help but bring up the example of China, a regime that has effectively managed to put down revolution and protest and dissension. Do you think that in the 21st century, we can have these 20th century style revolutions? Can we affect real change?
I think, Bruce, that is the biggest question out there. I'm hopeful that we can, as to how that's going to happen, what that's going to look like, how that's going to play out. I think that is the ultimate big question, because I think this is something that's going to be going on for some time. We're in the 8th week right now. I'm hoping to see some kind of way that it develops that maybe can bring about real change in Iran. I know that there are ways that maybe, the outside world can also chime in and play a role in holding Iran and the Islamic regime accountable for these human rights violations. How exactly that will play out, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this has to be some kind of uprising from internally that takes over the government, or how this regime can be taken over. But I'm not sure what will come of this, or how long this will be drawn out, or how many lives will be lost, because of it. But I think that is ultimately the big question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's pray for the best, certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And when I was talking with Tala about it, she said you, in addition to sharing stories like this and using the platform and keeping it in the news and talking about it, she said, contact your local representatives. I mean, is the U.S. doing enough? Sure. I mean, obviously, you do have people, even when I posted yesterday about my story with Tala airing, people are like, this is great, this is great sentiment, but what about here in the U.S.? We have, there's groups here that are struggling for equal rights, and the same type of thing, and it's very hyper locally focused, and some of that definitely validated. And so it does raise the question, is our government doing enough? Are our local officials doing enough? How much do we need to hold them accountable to find out what they're doing along these lines? And then the other thing is, and I have not looked too much into it, but I've heard on a couple occasions, I've listened to a couple podcasts, and Tala mentioned it, that some of the leaders in Iran, like a lot of their children are in the U.S. and they're very well off and they're living in LA, and some of them are even social media influencers. I don't know exactly who that is, but basically they're like, shut them down, get them out of here, tell the government to deport them, just like we did with Putin's offspring. Like, you're not allowed in the country, like you can't sit here and live large. And so are there other things that we can do, other things that, actionable?
I think that not enough is being done. I think, the U.S. has placed some more sanctions on Iran. The UN Human Rights Council is set to meet in a few days to talk about, tomorrow actually, to talk about the violations, the human rights violations that are happening in Iran. I think they want to put an investigative unit together to see what kind of information they can get out of Iran and what they're doing to their people. But whether or not they can actually do anything about it, I think that's the real concern. It's more for, yes, we're here. Yes, we see you. We want to investigate this. We want to hold Iran accountable. So I'm really glad that this meeting is going to be held tomorrow. So we'll see what comes from that. But no, not enough is being done. And I pray that the world can get more involved, that, people in power that have people living or coming to the United States, to Canada. I hope those people can be blocked from, these are the regime's people, or, their families. But more needs to be done. And I think it's going to take a village, and not just Iranians. I pray that we can inspire some non-Iranians to also help share some of this information. If people to just kind of get information out there and to keep this story in the news.
So whether, what I do is I Google Iran, and then I just hit the news tab to see what the latest thing is. Just so every day I know a little bit of what's happening, just so I'm still connected to it. I think that, even sharing this podcast once it comes out, something like that. I mean, like Tala said, and I keep going back to her because she was like, it matters. Like, if it's just one person that you change their mind and this matters to them all of a sudden, that's just one more ally that we have. I want to bring in Frankie J. He is also a podcaster here on Fireside,
Hi.
A friend of the show, a father as well. Frankie, your thoughts on this or any questions?
First and foremost, thank you for bringing me up for a moment. It sickens me really on how behind these countries are, especially the third world countries. And this reminded me of a movie I saw when I was younger. And I think it was 1990, 91, around that time. That movie came out with Sally Field, Not Without My Daughter. And it was a perfect example. and it was about Iran. This guy came over to the U.S., was a doctor, I believe. I can't remember that far back. Married a woman, and he insisted they go back to Iran for a vacation, and he trapped her into staying there. And once they got to once they got there, he flipped switches and became a man in Iran. And unbelievable on how they treat women over there. It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah, I do. And actually, I did see that movie. I will say that movie, though, got a lot of slack from a lot of Iranians because, not every man in Iran is a bad person. In fact, a lot of the men are protesting right now in Iran.
They're getting the brunt of these.
They are. So I think there was some criticism with that movie because it kind of made like Iranian men seem like, horrible people,
like painted them with a broad brush.
Like God forbid you dated an Iranian guy who wants to go see his mother in Iran. He's going to trap you there. Like,
yeah. Well, it is dramatized. I mean, it's movies.
I think the sentiment it didn't resonate well with a lot of Iranians, and a lot of the people that are protesting right now are young. This movement, this so-called revolution, is being led by young women. But right next to them is that young teenage boy, is that father, is that brother who's also by their side. So it's, I don't want there to be any impression that this is just a female-led movement. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of men that are supporting these women and want the same rights that they have for themselves too. Like they want these women to have those equal rights, and I praise them, and we can't do it without them. The slogan right now is women, life, freedom. If you hear the chanting in the streets of some of these protests, that is the slogan. If you want to post something and kind of get people to talk about it, post women, life, freedom, and then people will ask you, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Because that is the slogan right now for this movement, for one.
Yeah.
But then there's another part of this slogan, and Saya, you can help me with it. It's
Mihan Abadi.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Yes,
Ellie
yes.
just chimed in.
Yeah. Hi,
Ellie.
and actually, Ellie,
I'm going to have Ellie come in. But Frankie, did you have anything else that you wanted? Because I know that you wanted to add a little bit more before I cut you off and asked about the movie. So.
Well, no, and that's okay. I just wanted to add in how long this has been a problem. And I, of course, it's not all men. Just like here in the U.S., it's not all men that abuse women. It's not all women that abuse men. It's definitely family-based, and I really believe it's been going on forever, centuries, and for this thing to change, it has to start somewhere. Yeah. I appreciate you allowing me to come up and voice my opinion, because
Frankie,
it sickens me. It really does. So thank you, ladies. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Frankie.
I actually would love to bring in my friend Ellie.
I know. I've been inviting her to video all the time, and I'm like, is she shy?
No,
maybe she just wants to do audio.
She's a physician. She's very busy, but she graced us with her time today.
In between patients. So Ellie, you can unmute your mic, I think, because I don't think I can.
Hi. Yeah, I'm kind of dressed in sweats, sitting between patients, but I really wanted to catch this podcast today, or this show. So I'm very excited to be witnessing you guys talking about this.
I just wanted to kind of get how you're feeling right now. I know that you've been very active in this too, and you are trying to do your best. I know we're so disconnected, being here. But yeah, anything you kind of want to add with how you're feeling with all this?
Yeah, to echo a little bit of what you were saying, it's a devastation. The only reason almost all of us are here in this country is because for some reason or other, our parents could not go back. Right? Either they got displaced, their studies got interrupted, the crime, the revolution, the 8-year war that came right after the revolution with Iraq. And it just made sense to immigrate to another country, not just to the US, but also to Europe. But also, I would say, I know you were asking a lot during the beginning of the show, what do the elders think? What are the people over 50, 60 thinking right now, the expats? I would actually say, and this is all anecdotal, but I think that they're more guarded. They're not as hopeful as us younger folk are. And I think it's because they don't realize the people power that comes with social media and the pressure that the media and just taking your own home video, very similar to what, Danny Glover said in This Is America. It's your celly, it's a tool, it's a weapon, and you carry it. And we're seeing that with Iran right now. Whereas normally, we've never been able to witness something like this in the past. Even with the uprising of the Green Movement in 2009, it just wasn't as technologically linked in as it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge point, because honestly, the way that we're able to document this, because Iran has shut down, internet access information that's coming out, the only way that we're doing it is through technology. And so never before have we been able to witness a movement like this from inside of Iran, where the government is trying to silence you. Never before have we been able to witness something like this until now. So it's an absolutely huge part of why maybe some young people do have more hope that with this technology, with social media, with the power of it, maybe this time might bring about more change. I think it's a great point.
It's an awesome point. Yeah. I mean, it totally makes sense. I mean, I think a lot of times we look at our elders and our parents and we're like, gosh, they're set in their ways. Sure. They just don't want to disrupt, right? Yeah. They want to just keep the peace and keep everything safe.
Or they're not as hopeful because they're just so used to seeing some way for
nothing
decades.
ever mattered.
It's absolutely true, because I mean, remember when this first broke out, I started writing before like a major movement started. I started writing our senators because, there's a huge Iranian diaspora here in the DC area. And they were like, oh, it's not going to amount to anything. I bought a yard sign that says, stand with Iranian women, and put it up in my neighborhood. Initially, like my family, my friends were scared. Why are you doing that? Why are you attracting attention? Aren't you afraid? And I said, no, this is our right.
How do you wear those signs? Where'd you get that?
Etsy.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, even my parents were worried about showing their faces at the protests because somebody might be documenting them and it might get back to the Iranian government and they might not be able to get back into their country ever. So there is that fear. I mean, this Islamic regime, has induced fear on the people and the country for so long, and people have lived a certain way for so long that it's hard to break those notions. That's why when you say, what does bravery look like right now? Yeah. And I see these young women, these teenagers alongside their brothers and other teenagers, their male counterparts, coming out of their universities, protesting, taking off their hijabs, ripping up pictures of, supreme leaders. It's incredible what they're doing, and it's so inspiring. And I also want to point out what has also inspired me is the power of music. There is an artist who is unfortunately
he's jailed, right? He's jailed
right now. He actually, there's several artists, but Shirin Rajaee has a song that has become really the song of this movement, the anthem of this, ago, the people that are organizing these protests are playing that song on loudspeakers, and people are singing these words.
It's giving them life.
It's giving them life. Yeah. I will say the World Cup games are starting, and some of our big players out of Iran are not playing.
Really? Because that's the first game, right?
Ali Daei?
Watch it on Fox 5, by the way.
Not attending.
Yeah.
So,
not attending.
Okay. So Ali Daei was one of them.
Yeah. And they're doing this as a protest.
Ali Academy.
Can they get in trouble for that?
I don't know what the consequences are for them.
You bet.
Yeah.
but they are risking their
Because
lives.
they're
by
essentially standing up against the
any
government.
kind of protest, whether it's in
dissent.
verbal or whether you're doing it in person or whether you're speaking about it right now, as I'm doing. I am risking myself,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
family.
because yes, unfortunately, obviously, like these are risks that I'm willing to take here in the United States, but there are a lot of people that, you know, are like we talked about the rapper, you know, like Tamaj, he is rapping and saying things that he knows are going to get to the ear of somebody that's going to potentially take him, and they did.
He was shifting camp like periodically just to avoid getting arrested,
getting caught,
and eventually they
But
got
he knew
him.
it was
that's what
inevitable.
My friend was
Yeah.
saying that Tumaj was trying to, like, you know, move around and not be in the same space, knowing the risk of his words, his lyrics can cause. I hope that people will just help spread the word, help join us on this effort to keep this in the news, to, you know, educate folks. I mean, a lot of, you know, I see it on my social media feed all the time. I follow so many Iranians, so I'm immersed in it. But there are still a lot of Iranians and non-Iranians that are not really in tune. They're like, wait, what's going on in Iran? They have no idea. So it's unbelievable to me that this is not getting the attention that it needs. So if you can, you know, maybe I can post a few people to even follow.
Your Instagram, I feel like you put a lot of stuff on your Instagram.
There is one site that kind of organizes some of the protests.
NSG
It's
Iran
called
on
NSG.
Instagram.
It's called National Solidarity Group of Iran.
NSG Iran. And what's that website?
No,
The
that's on
Instagram
Instagram.
is NSG Iran.
Okay.
That's a good one to follow. They are the helping organize some of these protests that are happening in the DMV. So at least you can kind of stay, you know, in tune with what's happening locally.
The more we know, it's not that people don't want to be in LA. It's just like you said, they just don't
They
know.
don't know what's going on.
And so I appreciate
Can I teach you to say one thing
Yes,
before we go?
yes.
Okay.
Repeat
and if you guys
after
can
us.
learn this, Zan,
Zan,
woman,
woman,
Zendegi,
Zan, Zendigi,
life,
life, and
Azadi,
Azadi.
freedom.
Fireside.
Thanks for listening to my mom's show. Don't forget to subscribe.